Commander Veltar stood on the bridge of his massive warship and looked at the stars beyond. He had been fighting wars for over 300 years. His people, the Nexari, were known across the galaxy as the best military leaders. Everyone respected their battle skills and smart war plans. The Nexari had learned how to fight perfectly over thousands of years. They knew exactly how many soldiers to send into battle. They knew when to attack and when to retreat. Most importantly, they knew when a war was lost and it was time to give up. Every species in the galaxy followed the same basic rules of war. These rules were not written down anywhere, but everyone understood them. When a military force lost 70% of their soldiers, they would surrender. No commander would risk more than 40% of their ships in one big fight. No battle would last longer than 6 days. These rules made sense. They kept wars from destroying entire civilizations. Veltar remembered his first real battle. He was young then, serving under his father, who was also a great commander. The enemy had lost 68% of their forces. Within hours, they sent a message asking for peace. The war ended quickly and cleanly. Both sides kept most of their people alive. This was how civilized species fought wars. The communication officer interrupted his thoughts. "Commander, we are receiving a distress signal from the Outer Rim territories." Veltar turned toward the young officer. "What kind of distress signal?" "Sir, it appears to be a request for military assistance. A newly discovered species is apparently fighting multiple wars at the same time." This was not unusual. When the galaxy discovered new species, there were often conflicts. Some alien races would try to take over the newcomer's territory. Others would attempt to force them into unfavorable trade agreements. The Galactic Council often sent experienced military forces like the Nexari to help settle these disputes. "Tell me about this new species," Veltar said. The officer checked his data screen. They call themselves humans. Their home system is designated Terrasol. Our intelligence reports suggest they have basic technology. Kinetic weapons, simple fusion power, chemical rockets for space travel. Nothing that should worry the established galactic powers. Veltar nodded. Most new species had similar technology levels when first contacted. "Who are they fighting?" 3 different alien factions, sir. The Cathari Empire, the Vorthak Collective, and the Gelden Raiders. This made Veltar pause. Fighting one enemy was difficult for any new species. Fighting 3 at once was usually impossible. Most species would ask for help immediately or surrender to the strongest opponent. "How long have these humans been fighting?" The officer checked his screen again. His expression changed to confusion. "Sir, according to our records, they have been in active warfare for what they call 4 years. That would be approximately 1,460 days by our measurement." Veltar's jaw dropped open. No species fought for that long. The longest war in recorded galactic history had lasted only 90 days. After that, one side always surrendered or both sides agreed to peace. "Check your data again," Veltar ordered. "That cannot be correct." The officer ran the calculations 3 more times. Each time the result was the same. The humans had been fighting continuously for over 4 years. Not only that, but they showed no signs of stopping or asking for surrender terms. "Sir," the officer continued, "there is more strange information. The humans appear to have suffered significant casualties. Our estimates suggest they have lost over 60% of their military forces and nearly 40% of their civilian population." Veltar felt his blood run cold. Any species that suffered such massive losses would have surrendered immediately. The idea of continuing to fight after losing so many people was unthinkable. "Are we certain these humans understand basic military protocol?" he asked. "Unknown, sir. They have not responded to any standard surrender offers from their enemies." Veltar walked to the large viewing window of his ship. He had seen many wars and many species. Some were brave. Some were clever. Some were stubborn. But none had ever shown such apparent disregard for basic survival instincts. "Prepare the fleet for immediate departure," he commanded. "I want to see these humans for myself." As his ships prepared to leave, Veltar reviewed everything he knew about warfare. In his experience, every battle followed predictable patterns. Armies would fight until losses became too heavy. Commanders would calculate their chances of victory against their potential casualties. When the numbers looked bad, rational leaders would negotiate peace. This system worked because it protected civilizations from complete destruction. Yes, some territory might be lost, some resources might be given up, some pride might be damaged, But the species would survive. The people would live. The culture would continue. What the humans were apparently doing made no logical sense. They were fighting a war that they could not win against enemies they could not defeat. They were accepting casualties that should have broken their will to fight. They were continuing a conflict that had already cost them nearly half their population. During the journey to human space, Veltar studied every piece of available information about this strange species. The humans came from a single planet covered mostly by water. They had developed basic space travel only recently. Their technology was far behind the galactic standard. Most interesting was their history. According to the data, humans had been fighting wars against each other for thousands of years. Their own planet had seen countless conflicts. Some of these wars had lasted decades. Many had resulted in massive casualties. Yet somehow, the species had survived and continued to grow. "Sir," the navigation officer reported, "we are approaching the edge of human territory." Veltar returned to his command position. "What do our sensors show?" "Multiple active battle sites, sir. It appears the humans are currently engaged in fighting on 17 different fronts simultaneously. 17 active battles at once." Veltar had never heard of any species managing more than 3 or 4 conflicts at the same time. The logistics alone should have been impossible for such a primitive civilization. "Sir, we are receiving a transmission from the humans," the communications officer announced. "Put it on the main screen." The image that appeared showed a human male in military uniform. He looked tired but determined. Behind him, Veltar could see the busy activity of what was clearly a military command center. "Nexari vessel. This is Captain Kim Dae-ho of the Terran Defense Force. We appreciate your offer of assistance, but we must inform you that we are currently engaged in active military operations." Veltar stepped forward. "Captain Kim, I am Commander Veltar. We have come to offer mediation services. According to our information, your species has suffered severe casualties. Surely it is time to consider peace negotiations." The human captain's expression hardened. "Commander, we appreciate your concern. However, we do not consider our current situation to require surrender discussions." Veltar felt confusion wash over him. These humans were speaking as if they still had a chance of victory. As if their massive losses meant nothing. As if 4 years of continuous warfare was normal. "Captain, perhaps we should meet in person to discuss the situation more thoroughly." "Agreed, Commander. You are welcome aboard our flagship." As Veltar prepared to transport over to the human ship, he wondered what he would find. Everything he thought he knew about warfare and military logic was about to be challenged by a species that apparently followed no rational rules. All the humans were about to teach him that some species do not fight battles the way everyone else does. Some species fight in ways that the galaxy had never seen before. Commander Veltar materialized on the human warship through quantum transport. The first thing that struck him was the noise. Nexari ships were quiet and calm during operations. This human vessel buzzed with constant activity. People were running between stations. Voices were calling out reports. Alarms were sounding in the distance. The second thing he noticed was the condition of the ship itself. The walls showed signs of recent battle damage. Scorch marks from energy weapons covered several surfaces. Some sections had been hastily repaired with metal patches. This ship had been in many fights. Captain Kim Dae-ho approached him with quick steps. Behind the captain walked several other humans in military uniforms. Veltar noticed that many of them showed signs of injury. One woman had her arm in a support sling. A man walked with a slight limp. None of them seemed to think these injuries were unusual. "Commander Veltar, welcome aboard the Soul's Pride," Captain Kim said. "This is Lieutenant Park Yoon-ji, our communications officer, and Lieutenant Colonel Ryuhan Wool, our chief military strategist." Veltar looked around the command center more carefully. The humans had multiple battle displays showing active combat zones. Red indicators marked enemy positions. Blue indicators showed human forces. The amount of red on the screens was alarming. "Captain Kim, I must ask directly. Your species has been fighting for 4 years. You have suffered massive casualties. Why have you not sought peace negotiations?" The humans looked at each other. Captain Kim gestured toward a meeting room. "Perhaps we should discuss this privately." Inside the smaller room, Veltar sat across from the human officers. The furniture was simple and functional. No decorations or comfort items. Everything was designed for pure military efficiency. "Commander," Captain Kim began, I think there might be some confusion about our situation. We are not looking for peace negotiations because we are not ready to surrender. Veltar felt his confusion growing. Captain, according to our intelligence, you have lost 67% of your military forces. Your civilian population has suffered 40% casualties. By any reasonable military standard, continued resistance is impossible. Lieutenant Colonel Ryu leaned forward. Commander, may I ask what you consider reasonable military standards? Certainly. When military losses reach 70%, any rational species will surrender. When civilian casualties exceed 20%, peace negotiations become mandatory. These are basic principles followed throughout the galaxy. The humans were quiet for a moment. Then Lieutenant Park spoke up. Commander, who decided these standards? They evolved naturally over thousands of years. Every civilized species recognizes these limits. Captain Kim stood up and walked to a wall display. Let me show you something, Commander. He activated a screen showing human territory. Red areas marked enemy occupation. Blue areas showed human control. What do you see? Veltar studied the display. I see that enemy forces control approximately 60% of your territory. Correct. Now, in your experience, what should we do in this situation? Negotiate a peace treaty. Surrender the occupied territories in exchange for protection of your remaining population. Accept reasonable terms to preserve your species. The room went silent. The humans looked at each other again. Finally, Captain Kim spoke. Commander, I need to explain something fundamental about humans. We do not accept defeat when our survival is at stake. But surely you understand that continued resistance will only lead to greater casualties. Lieutenant Colonel Ryu pulled up another display. Commander, let me show you our production numbers. The screen filled with data about human manufacturing. In the past year, we have increased our military production by 400%. Veltar studied the numbers. How is this possible with such heavy casualties? We converted our entire civilian economy to military production. Every factory now makes weapons or military equipment. Every person who is not fighting is building things for those who are fighting. This made no sense to Veltar. But what about your normal economy? Your civilian needs? Your non-military population? Lieutenant Park answered. Commander, we do not have a non-military population anymore. Every human is contributing to the war effort. You mean your soldiers? No, I mean every human. Children help in factories. Elderly people make ammunition. Pregnant women design better weapons. Everyone participates. Veltar felt his understanding of civilization being challenged. But this will destroy your society even if you win. Captain Kim sat back down. Commander, let me ask you a question. What happens to a species that surrenders to aggressive enemies? They negotiate terms. They give up some territory or resources. They accept a subordinate position but maintain their existence. And if the enemy does not honor those terms? Veltar paused. In his experience, peace treaties were usually honored. That would be unusual. Commander, all three species attacking us have already shown they do not honor agreements. The Cathari enslaved the last species that surrendered to them. The Vorthak completely destroyed 2 civilizations that tried to negotiate. The Geldan raiders take prisoners only to use them as forced labor until they die. This information was new to Veltar. His intelligence reports had not included these details. Lieutenant Colonel Ryu continued the explanation. For humans, surrender means extinction, not just defeat, complete extinction. So we do not consider surrender to be an option. But surely some survival is better than total destruction. Captain Kim's expression became very serious. Commander, humans have a saying. It is better to die on your feet than live on your knees. Veltar tried to process this concept. Every species he knew would choose survival over pride. The idea of preferring death to subordination was completely foreign to him. So you will fight until every human is dead. We will fight until we win, or until there are no humans left to fight. The alien commander sat quietly for several minutes. Finally, he spoke again. Show me your military doctrine. Lieutenant Colonel Ryu activated another display. Our current strategy involves total resource commitment. 100% of our manufacturing capacity goes to military production. 97% of our adult population is directly involved in the war effort. We are prepared to accept any casualty rate necessary to achieve victory. Any casualty rate? Yes. If we must lose 90% of our population to save the remaining 10%, that is acceptable. If we must sacrifice entire planets to protect our species, we will do that too. Veltar looked at the numbers on the screen. By his calculations, the humans were planning military operations that would be suicidal by galactic standards. Commander, Captain Kim said, I think you need to understand something important about humans. We do not fight wars to minimize losses. We fight wars to win them. But the costs of losing are higher than the costs of winning. So we pay whatever price is necessary. Lieutenant Park added, Our enemies expect us to follow the same rules as other species. They expect us to surrender when losses become heavy. This gives us an advantage. What advantage? They do not prepare for opponents who refuse to quit. Veltar realized that his entire understanding of military strategy was being challenged by these humans. They operated under completely different assumptions about acceptable losses, victory conditions, and the purpose of warfare itself. Captain Kim, may I observe one of your military operations? Of course, Commander. In fact, we have a major engagement beginning in 6 hours. You can see exactly how humans fight. As Veltar prepared to witness human warfare firsthand, he wondered if anything he thought he knew about battle would still make sense by the end of the day. These humans were about to show him that some species do not fight to minimize casualties. They fight to eliminate enemies. Commander Veltar stood on the observation deck of the human flagship as alarms began sounding throughout the ship. 6 hours had passed since his meeting with Captain Kim. Now he was about to see human military doctrine in action. Commander, incoming enemy fleet detected, Lieutenant Park announced from her station. Cathari Empire forces approaching the New Busan colony. Veltar looked at the tactical display. The enemy fleet was massive by galactic standards. 47 Cathari warships were moving toward the human colony. According to his calculations, this represented about 35% of the Cathari military in this sector. That is a significant commitment of forces, Veltar observed. The Cathari are taking this attack very seriously. Captain Kim nodded. They want to end resistance at New Busan permanently. The colony has been causing them problems for 8 months. What is your response plan? Veltar asked. Admiral Lee Young-suk will handle the fleet engagement. Let me connect you to his command channel. The main screen switched to show the bridge of another human warship. Admiral Lee was a middle-aged human with gray hair and tired eyes. Behind him, Veltar could see crew members working at various stations with intense focus. Admiral Lee, Commander Veltar is observing today's operation, Captain Kim said. Admiral Lee looked directly at Veltar. Commander, you're about to see how humans defend their people. I hope you find it educational. Veltar studied the tactical situation more carefully. The human fleet in the area consisted of 52 ships. This was almost exactly equal to the attacking Cathari force. By galactic military standards, this would result in a long, careful battle with both sides trying to minimize losses. Admiral, what percentage of your fleet will you commit to this engagement? Veltar asked. All of it. Veltar felt shock run through his body. All of it? That violates every principle of fleet management. You should keep reserves for defense of other positions. Commander, we do not fight defensive battles. We fight to destroy the enemy. On the tactical display, Veltar watched as every single human ship in the sector began moving toward the Cathari fleet. No reserves were held back. No ships remained to guard other positions. The humans were committing 100% of their available forces. Admiral, if you lose this battle, you will have no ships left to defend any of your colonies. If we lose this battle, the Cathari will destroy New Busan anyway, so we fight to make sure we do not lose. The two fleets met in space between the colony and the outer asteroid belt. Veltar watched the engagement begin with weapons fire at maximum range. Both sides launched missiles and energy beams at each other. At first, the battle looked normal. Ships maneuvered for better positions. Commanders tried to gain tactical advantages. Some vessels took damage and fell back for repairs. This was standard fleet combat as practiced throughout the galaxy. Then something happened that made Veltar question everything he thought he knew about space. Warfare. A human destroyer named Inshin's Pride took heavy damage from Cathari weapons. Its engines were failing. Its weapon systems were offline. By any reasonable standard, the ship should have withdrawn from battle to preserve the crew. Instead, Captain Nam So-young gave an order that shocked Veltar to his core. All power to engines. Ramming speed. Captain Nam, what are you doing? Admiral Lee asked over the communication channel. Sir, my ship is too damaged to continue fighting effectively. Requesting permission to ram the Cathari command ship. Permission granted. Good luck, Captain. Veltar watched in disbelief as the damaged human ship accelerated directly toward the largest Cathari vessel. The alien ship tried to move away, but the human destroyer was moving too fast. Captain Nam, you still have time to evacuate your crew, Admiral Lee said. Negative, sir. We are staying with our ship. If we are going to die today, we are taking enemies with us. The Incheon's Pride slammed into the Cathari command ship at full speed. The explosion was visible across the entire battlefield. Both ships were completely destroyed. All crew members on both vessels died instantly. Status report. Admiral Lee requested calmly. Sir, Captain Nam's attack has disabled the Cathari fleet coordination. Their remaining ships are having trouble working together. Veltar could not believe what he had just witnessed. The humans had deliberately sacrificed an entire ship and crew to gain a tactical advantage. No galactic species would make such a trade. The loss of trained personnel was always considered too valuable to waste. Admiral, your captain just killed her entire crew for a minor tactical gain, Veltar said. Commander, Captain Nam saved hundreds of thousands of human lives on New Busan. That is not a minor gain. The battle continued. But now Veltar saw similar patterns everywhere. Human ships that took critical damage did not retreat. Instead, they looked for ways to cause maximum damage to the enemy before being destroyed. A human cruiser with a damaged reactor overloaded its power systems to create a massive explosion that took out 2 Cathari frigates. A badly damaged human frigate rammed a Cathari supply ship, preventing the enemy from resupplying their weapons. Each time, the human crews stayed with their ships until the end. No one evacuated. No one surrendered. They treated their own deaths as acceptable cost for damaging the enemy. This is insane, Veltar muttered to himself. No, Commander, Captain Kim said, having overheard. This is human. As the battle continued, Veltar kept track of the casualty numbers. The humans were losing ships at an alarming rate. By his calculations, they had already lost 60% of their fleet. Any other species would have begun withdrawal procedures. Instead, the human attacks became more aggressive. All ships, implement Protocol 7, Admiral Lee announced. What is Protocol 7? Veltar asked. Coordinated sacrifice strikes, Captain Kim explained. Ships work in pairs. One ship draws enemy fire while the other delivers maximum damage. Both ships usually die, but they take multiple enemies with them. Veltar watched as human ships began working in coordinated pairs exactly as described. They were not trying to survive the battle. They were trying to kill as many Cathari as possible before dying. Admiral Lee, your casualties are approaching 70%, Veltar reported. Understood. Continue the attack. Admiral, you must withdraw your remaining forces. You cannot sustain these losses. Commander, we will fight until the enemy is destroyed or until we have no ships left. Those are the only 2 ways this battle ends. Veltar realized that the humans meant exactly what they said. They would rather lose every ship and every crew member than allow the Cathari to reach New Busan. Strategic update, the tactical officer reported. Cathari fleet strength is down to 21 ships. Human fleet strength is down to 14 ships. The humans had lost 73% of their fleet, but the Cathari had lost 55% of theirs. More importantly, the Cathari commander was beginning to show signs of concern. Sir, the enemy fleet is requesting reinforcements, the communications officer announced. Reinforcements? Veltar asked. They still outnumber your remaining ships. Yes, but they have never fought an enemy that refuses to retreat, Admiral Lee explained. They expected us to withdraw when casualties became heavy. Now they are realizing that we will fight until they are all dead. 20 minutes later, something unprecedented in galactic military history occurred. The Cathari fleet, despite still outnumbering the human ships, began to withdraw from the battlefield. Sir, enemy fleet is retreating, the tactical officer reported. Pursuit course? Admiral Lee asked. Sir, we only have 14 ships left. That is 14 more than we need to hunt down a retreating enemy. All ships pursuit speed. Veltar watched as the battered human fleet chased the fleeing Cathari ships. Even after losing most of their forces, the humans were still attacking. Admiral, why are you pursuing? You have achieved your objective. New Busan is safe. Commander, our objective is not just to protect New Busan. Our objective is to make sure the Cathari never Attack any human colony again. The human ships continued their pursuit until the last Cathari vessel left human space. Only then did Admiral Lee order his fleet to return to base. Final casualty report, Admiral Lee requested. Sir, we have 14 operational ships remaining from our original 52-ship fleet. We lost 38 ships and their entire crews. Acceptable losses, the Admiral replied. Strategic result? The Cathari no longer have sufficient forces to threaten any human colonies in this sector. Veltar felt his understanding of military strategy completely collapse. The humans had won a strategic victory by accepting losses that would have caused any other species to surrender immediately. They had turned defeat into victory through sheer willingness to die. Commander, Captain Kim said quietly, now you have seen how humans fight when survival is at stake. Veltar looked at the tactical display showing the positions of the 14 surviving human ships. Such a small number. But somehow they had defeated a much larger enemy force through tactics that defied all military logic. Your species fights like they have nothing to lose, he observed. No, Commander. We fight like we have everything to lose, and that makes all the difference. Commander Veltar spent the next 3 weeks in human space. He told his superiors that he was gathering intelligence for peace negotiations. In reality, he was trying to understand how the humans could fight the way they did. What he discovered challenged everything he believed about civilization itself. Captain Kim arranged for him to visit human colonies and military installations. Veltar's first stop was the Terran Military Academy on Mars. Colonel Bae Min-jun, the academy director, met him at the transport pad. Welcome to Mars, Commander, Colonel Bae said. I understand you want to learn about human military training. As they walked through the academy grounds, Veltar noticed something unusual. Young humans, some who looked barely adult, were practicing with real weapons. They moved with the precision of experienced soldiers. Colonel, how long do humans train before becoming soldiers? Every human begins basic military training at age 12. By 16, they are qualified for combat roles if needed. Veltar stopped walking. You train children to be warriors? We train children to be survivors. There is a difference. They entered a large training facility where hundreds of young humans were practicing combat drills. Some were learning to use weapons. Others were studying battle tactics on computer screens. All of them showed the same serious focus that Veltar had seen on the warships. Commander, let me ask you something, Colonel Bae said. What happens to your young people when your worlds are attacked? They are evacuated to safe areas. Children do not participate in warfare. And if there are no safe areas, Veltar had never considered this situation. In galactic warfare, civilians were usually protected by surrender agreements. That does not happen. Wars end before civilians are threatened. But what if they did not end? What if the enemy wanted to kill everyone? Colonel Bae led him to an observation window overlooking another training area. Below them, human children as young as 10 years old were learning to operate emergency equipment and basic defense procedures. Commander, humans learned long ago that in a war for survival, everyone must be able to fight. Age does not matter. Gender does not matter. Only survival matters. They visited a manufacturing center next. Dr. Han Yu-jin, the chief engineer, showed Veltar through the massive production facility. What he saw there shocked him even more than the battle he had witnessed. The factory was enormous. Thousands of humans worked at machines that produced weapons, ammunition, and military equipment. But these were not just soldiers. Veltar saw elderly humans operating complex machinery. He saw pregnant women designing new weapon systems. He saw teenagers assembling combat gear. Dr. Han, why are civilians working in military production? Commander, we do not have civilians during a war for survival. We have humans who fight and humans who build things for fighters. Veltar watched an elderly woman, who must have been past normal retirement age, carefully assembling electronic components for missile guidance systems. Her hands moved with the skill of decades of experience. That woman should be resting and enjoying her remaining years, Veltar observed. That woman has 6 grandchildren in the fleet, Dr. Han replied. Every guidance system she builds might save their lives. She works 16 hours a day by choice. They moved to another section of the factory. Here, Veltar saw something that made him question his understanding of biology itself. A human female who was clearly pregnant was working at a computer terminal, designing improvements to ship armor. Dr. Han, surely pregnant females should not be working in military production. Why not? Her mind works perfectly. Her skills are needed. She chooses to contribute. Veltar approached the woman. "Excuse me, may I ask why you are working here?" The woman looked up from her computer. "My name is Lee Mi-young. I am a materials engineer. The baby I am carrying will be born into this war. I want to make sure there is still a human civilization for the child to grow up in. But is this not dangerous for you and your child?" "Commander, what is more dangerous? Me working to improve our defenses or me sitting at home while our enemies try to exterminate our species?" Dr. Han led Veltar to the facility's control center. Wall displays showed production numbers from across human space. The statistics were incredible. "In the past year, we have increased military production by 600%, Dr. Han explained. "How is this possible? We converted every factory, every workshop, every manufacturing facility to military production. Humans no longer make civilian goods. We make weapons, ships, ammunition, and military equipment." Veltar studied the numbers. "But what do your people use for daily needs? Food, clothing, housing? We make only what is necessary for survival. Everything else goes to the war effort. This will destroy your economy. Commander, if we lose this war, we will not need an economy. Dead species do not have economic concerns." They visited the living quarters where the factory workers stayed. Veltar expected to see luxury accommodations or at least comfortable living spaces. Instead, he found simple rooms with basic furniture. Each room housed multiple people. Privacy was minimal. Comfort was secondary to efficiency. "Your people live like soldiers even when they are not fighting," he observed. "Our people live like a species fighting for survival," Dr. Han corrected. "Individual comfort is less important than collective survival." Veltar met with workers from different sections of the factory. Each person told him the same basic story. They had voluntarily given up their normal lives to contribute to the war effort. They worked long hours. They accepted minimal personal comfort. They did whatever jobs were needed. A former teacher named Park Sung-ho now operated machines that made combat boots. "I taught literature before the war," he explained. "Now I make sure our soldiers have proper footwear. Both jobs serve humanity." An artist named Kim Hye-jin designed camouflage patterns for military equipment. "I used to paint beautiful pictures," she said. "Now I paint patterns that help our soldiers stay alive." The art is different, but the purpose is the same. Veltar realized that the humans had transformed their entire civilization into a military organization. Every person had a role in the war effort. Every resource went toward fighting or supporting fighters. Every decision was made based on military necessity. "Dr. Han, how long can your society function this way?" "As long as necessary, Commander. Humans are very adaptable. But surely there are limits. People need rest, entertainment, personal relationships. People need to survive first. Everything else comes after survival is secured." That evening, Veltar attended a community gathering in the factory's main hall. He expected to see tired, unhappy people forced into difficult lives. Instead, he found something completely unexpected. The humans were celebrating. They shared simple food and told stories. Children played games while adults discussed their work. There was laughter and music and social interaction. "I do not understand," Veltar told Colonel Bay, who had joined him for the evening. "These people have given up everything for the war effort." "Why do they seem happy?" "Because they have not given up everything, Commander. They have given up individual comfort to preserve their species. That is a trade most humans consider worthwhile." A young woman named Jo Yoon-hee approached them. "Commander Veltar, I heard you are trying to understand how humans fight. May I tell you something?" "Please do." "Before the war, I worked in a comfortable office. I had a nice apartment and plenty of personal possessions. I was comfortable, but I was not proud of what I did. And now? Now I build weapons that protect human children. I live in a small room and work long hours, but every night I go to sleep knowing that I helped save lives. That makes me happier than comfort ever did." As Veltar returned to his quarters that night, he tried to process what he had learned. The humans had voluntarily transformed their entire civilization into a war machine. They had given up individual comfort for collective survival. Most remarkably, they seemed to consider this transformation a positive change. No galactic species had ever shown such complete commitment to warfare. Most civilizations tried to keep military and civilian activities separate. The idea of converting an entire society to military production was considered primitive and destructive. But the humans were not just surviving this transformation. They were thriving under it. Their production numbers were increasing. Their military effectiveness was growing. Their people remained motivated and determined. Captain Kim, Veltar said when he returned to the flagship. "I think I am beginning to understand why your enemies cannot defeat you." "Why is that, Commander?" "Because you are not just fighting a war. You have become a war." 2 months after Commander Veltar's visit to the human war factories, everything changed. The three alien species attacking humanity had finally decided to work together. The Cathari Empire, the Vorthak Collective, and the Geldan Raiders formed an alliance with one goal: complete destruction of the human species. Veltar received the intelligence report on his flagship. The numbers were terrifying even by his standards. The combined enemy fleet consisted of over 800 ships. They carried planet-killing weapons. They had enough firepower to destroy entire star systems. "Sir, the enemy alliance is moving toward Earth itself," his tactical officer reported. Veltar felt cold fear run through his body. Earth was the human homeworld. It contained over 8 billion human lives. If the planet fell, the human species would be finished. "What are the human fleet numbers in the Sol system?" he asked. "Approximately 50 ships, sir. They are outnumbered 16-1. Veltar immediately contacted Captain Kim aboard the Sol's Pride. When the human captain appeared on his screen, Veltar could see the stress in his face. "Captain Kim, my intelligence shows a massive enemy fleet approaching Earth. You must begin evacuation procedures immediately." Captain Kim's expression was grim but determined. "Commander, we appreciate your concern. However, evacuation is not an option. Captain, you face impossible odds. No military force can defend against such overwhelming numbers. We are not planning a traditional military defense. Then what are you planning?" "You will see, Commander. We are implementing something we call Protocol Omega." Veltar had never heard this term before. "What is Protocol Omega?" "The final option, Commander. When conventional military resistance becomes impossible, we activate our last line of defense." "Which is?" "Every human becomes a weapon." Before Veltar could ask for clarification, the communication ended. The human ships were already moving into position around Earth, but their formation made no sense by normal military standards. Instead of concentrating their forces for maximum firepower, the human ships were spreading out across the entire solar system. Some moved to defend the outer planets. Others took positions near asteroid belts. A few ships actually moved closer to the enemy fleet. "Sir, the human deployment pattern appears random," his tactical officer observed. "No," Veltar said slowly. "I think they are not trying to stop the enemy fleet. They are trying to make the enemy pay the highest possible price for every advance." The enemy alliance reached the outer edge of the Sol system 3 days later. Their first target was the human colony on Pluto. According to normal military logic, the small human garrison should have surrendered immediately. Instead, something happened that shocked even Veltar, who thought he understood human warfare by now. The human defenders on Pluto did not just fight with their military equipment. They turned the entire colony into a weapon. Mining explosives were converted into massive bombs. Construction equipment became improvised tanks. Even the colony's children helped by operating communication systems and providing intelligence. When Vorthak ground forces landed on the planet's surface, they expected to face a small military garrison. Instead, they found that every human on the planet was armed and ready to fight. Teachers fought alongside soldiers. Medical personnel used their knowledge of anatomy to place weapons more effectively. Even elderly colonists participated in the defense. "This is not military resistance," the Vorthak commander reported to his fleet. "Every human civilian is a combatant." The battle for Pluto lasted 6 days. The human defenders were eventually overwhelmed, but they inflicted massive casualties on the enemy forces. More importantly, they established a pattern that would be repeated throughout the solar system. As the enemy fleet moved toward the inner planets, they found the same situation everywhere. Human colonies did not surrender. Human civilians did not seek protection. Instead, every human settlement became a fortress defended by its entire population. Mars fell after 2 weeks of fighting. The human defenders had converted the planet's terraform equipment into weapons. Atmospheric processors became chemical weapon factories. Underground cities became mazes designed to trap enemy soldiers. The space stations around Jupiter were defended by workers who had never been soldiers, but they fought with the same determination as trained military personnel. When their weapons ran out, they used industrial tools. When those broke, they used their bare hands. Veltar watched these battles from a safe distance. Each time he expected the humans to surrender when casualties became too heavy. Each time, the humans fought until every defender was dead. "Sir, the enemy alliance has lost approximately 30% of their ground forces," his intelligence officer reported. "And they have not even reached Earth yet," Veltar observed. The enemy commanders were having the same realization. They had expected to fight the human military. Instead, they were fighting the entire human species. Every person they encountered was an enemy combatant. Every building was a potential fortress. Every piece of human technology was a possible weapon. Admiral Wan Seok-jin, commanding the human fleet defending Earth, gave Veltar permission to observe the final battle. When the alien commander reached Earth's orbit, he saw something that would stay with him for the rest of his life. The planet below had been completely transformed for war. Every city was now a military base. Every civilian building contained weapons and equipment. The entire population of Earth had been organized into defensive units. "Admiral Wan, your planet has 8 billion people. Surely not all of them are combat capable. Commander, every human who can hold a weapon will fight. Every human who cannot hold a weapon will support those who can. Even the children. The children help with communications, medical care, and supply distribution. They are part of the defense network. And the elderly? Many of our best strategic planners are elderly humans with decades of experience. Age brings wisdom." The enemy fleet began its assault on Earth with orbital bombardment. But instead of breaking human resistance, the attack seemed to make it stronger. Humans in destroyed cities regrouped in underground facilities. Separated units used improvised communication methods to coordinate attacks. When Cathari troops landed in the ruins of Seoul, they faced something unprecedented in galactic military history. The entire city had become a weapon. Every street was trapped. Every building contained hidden defenders. Every piece of debris could hide an ambush. A human schoolteacher named Kim Ji-won used homemade explosives to destroy an enemy tank. She had learned to make the explosives from chemistry lessons she taught to children. An elderly shopkeeper named Oh Dong-hyun coordinated sniper attacks from his knowledge of the city's layout. He had lived in Seoul for 70 years and knew every hiding place. Human children as young as 8 years old helped by carrying messages between defensive positions. They could move through destroyed buildings more easily than adults. "This is impossible," the Cathari ground commander reported. "We are not fighting an army. We are fighting an entire civilization." The Vorthak tried a different approach. They targeted what they thought were civilian areas, expecting to find non-combatants who would surrender. Instead, they found that human civilians were just as dangerous as human soldiers. Factory workers had converted their production lines to make weapons. Office workers had organized themselves into military units. Even hospital patients who could still fight joined the defense. Dr. Yoon Soo-jin, a medical professional, used her knowledge of human anatomy to train other civilians in the most effective ways to injure enemy soldiers. She turned healing knowledge into fighting knowledge. Professor Lee Jae-sung, who had taught history at a university, used his knowledge of ancient military tactics to help organize urban warfare strategies. The enemy alliance had planned to conquer Earth in a few days. Instead, they found themselves trapped in a grinding battle against an opponent that seemed to grow stronger as casualties increased. "Sir, our losses are approaching 50%, the Vorthak fleet commander reported. "Continue the assault," his superior ordered. "These humans must be defeated." But Veltar could see what the enemy commanders were beginning to realize. The humans were not trying to win a traditional military victory. They were trying to make the cost of conquering Earth so high that the enemy would choose to retreat rather than continue fighting. "Admiral Wan," Veltar said, "your people are dying in enormous numbers." "Yes, Commander, but our enemies are dying too, and they have further to travel to replace their losses. Is this victory worth the cost?" "Commander, if we lose this battle, every human in the universe will die." If we win this battle, the human species will survive. That makes any cost acceptable. As the battle for Earth continued, Veltar realized he was witnessing something that had never happened before in galactic history. An entire species was willing to die to the last individual rather than surrender. The question was no longer whether the humans could win. The question was whether their enemies had the will to accept the casualties necessary to destroy them completely. The siege of Earth lasted 43 days. Commander Veltar watched every day of it from his position in high orbit. What he witnessed changed his understanding of warfare, civilization, and the nature of intelligent life itself. By day 20, the enemy alliance had lost over half their ground forces. The human defenders had lost even more. Entire cities had been reduced to rubble. Millions of human lives had been lost. Yet somehow human resistance was growing stronger instead of weaker. This makes no sense, Veltar told his tactical officer. Their casualties should have broken their will to fight weeks ago. Sir, perhaps humans do not calculate acceptable losses the same way other species do. On day 25, something happened that demonstrated just how different human thinking really was. The Geldan raiders captured a human medical facility in the ruins of Tokyo. They expected to find wounded humans who would provide information in exchange for medical treatment. Instead, they found that the human medical staff had armed themselves and turned the hospital into a fortress. Dr. Park Hyun-ju, the chief medical officer, led the defense personally. We took an oath to protect human life, she told her staff. That includes protecting lives from invaders. The medical facility held out for 6 days. When it finally fell, the Geldan found that the human doctors and nurses had fought just as fiercely as trained soldiers. They had used their medical knowledge to create more effective weapons and to treat their own wounded, so they could return to fighting. Even their healers are warriors, the Geldan commander reported with obvious frustration. By day 30, the enemy alliance was facing a problem they had never encountered before. Their forces were exhausted. Their supply lines were stretched. Their casualties were enormous. But the humans showed no signs of surrendering or even weakening. Captain Lee Jin-ho, defending what remained of Busan, received orders that perfectly demonstrated human military thinking. His position was surrounded. His ammunition was almost gone. His men were exhausted and wounded. Any other species would have surrendered or attempted to retreat. Instead, Captain Lee received this message. Final assault authorized. Eliminate as many enemies as possible. Sir, his lieutenant asked, what about evacuation? There is no evacuation. We fight until we win or until we are all dead. Captain Lee led his remaining troops in a direct assault on the enemy positions. They knew they would probably die. They attacked anyway. Their goal was not survival, but maximum damage to the enemy. The attack succeeded in destroying a major Cathari ammunition depot. Captain Lee and most of his men died in the explosion, but their sacrifice eliminated enough enemy supplies to affect the entire sector's fighting capability. Veltar recorded the battle in his official log. Human forces continue to accept casualty rates that should result in immediate surrender. Instead, they appear to become more aggressive as losses increase. Standard military psychology does not apply to this species. On day 35, the turning point came, not from a major battle or a strategic breakthrough, but from something much simpler. The enemy alliance began to doubt their ability to win. The Vorthak Supreme Commander sent a message to his fleet that Veltar intercepted. Our casualties are approaching 60%. The humans show no signs of surrender. Even if we eliminate all resistance on Earth, we will not have sufficient forces remaining to control human territory elsewhere. This was the critical realization. The humans were not fighting to defend Earth. They were fighting to make conquest so costly that their enemies would choose to stop fighting. Admiral Won Seok-jin, still commanding human space forces despite losing most of his fleet, made a decision that demonstrated the final aspect of human warfare doctrine. All remaining ships, prepare for final assault on enemy command vessels. Veltar contacted the Admiral immediately. Admiral Won, you have only 12 ships remaining. The enemy still has over 200 ships in orbit. Correct, Commander. You cannot possibly win a direct engagement. We are not trying to win a direct engagement. We are trying to eliminate enemy leadership. That is a suicide mission. Yes, and it is necessary. The 12 remaining human ships launched themselves directly at the heart of the enemy fleet. They ignored all other targets. Their only goal was to reach and destroy the command ships of the 3 enemy species. The human ships took enormous damage as they charged through the enemy formation. But they were not trying to survive the battle. They were trying to complete their mission before being destroyed. The flagship Soul's Pride, heavily damaged and with most systems failing, managed to reach the Vorthak command ship. Captain Kim Dae-ho, who had been Veltar's first contact with humanity, sent a final message. Commander Veltar, thank you for trying to understand us. Tell the galaxy that humans do not surrender when survival is at stake. The Soul's Pride rammed the Vorthak command ship at full speed. Both vessels exploded in a massive fireball that could be seen from the planet's surface. Similar scenes played out across the orbital battlefield. Human ships sacrificed themselves to eliminate enemy commanders. Within 1 hour, all 3 enemy species had lost their senior leadership in the Sol system. The effect was immediate and devastating for the enemy alliance. Without central command, their forces began to operate independently. Coordination broke down. Some units continued attacking. Others began defensive maneuvers. A few started retreating toward their home territories. On the surface of Earth, human defenders recognized the opportunity. Despite their enormous losses, they launched coordinated attacks on the confused enemy forces. Local commanders like Colonel Nam Gisu in the ruins of Daegu led desperate assaults that succeeded because the enemy forces were no longer working together. All units. Maximum effort, Colonel Nam broadcast to every human defender on the planet. The enemy command structure has been broken. This is our chance. What followed was unprecedented in galactic military history. A defending force that had lost over 70% of its people launched a planet-wide counterattack against numerically superior invaders. Human civilians joined military units in the attacks. Factory workers fought alongside professional soldiers. Children provided intelligence and support. Elderly humans used their knowledge of local terrain to guide assault teams. The enemy forces, already demoralized by heavy casualties and loss of leadership, found themselves under attack from an opponent they thought was defeated. Many units began withdrawing to their landing ships. On day 40, the Cathari made the first formal request for negotiations. We propose a ceasefire to discuss terms. Their message read. Admiral Wan's replacement. Admiral Choi Young-min responded with a message that defined human victory conditions. Unconditional withdrawal from all human territory. No negotiations. The Cathari commander tried again. We are prepared to offer favorable terms for human surrender. We do not surrender. You withdraw or you die. On day 42, the Zeldan raiders began evacuating their ground forces. They had lost over 80% of their troops and could no longer maintain offensive operations. On day 43, the Vorthak collective fleet began withdrawing from Earth orbit. Their ground forces followed within hours. By sunset on day 43, no enemy soldiers remained on Earth. Veltar received a final communication from Admiral Choi. Commander, the Sol system is secure. Enemy forces are retreating from all human territory. Admiral, your casualties were enormous. Was this victory worth the cost? Commander, we lost 78% of our military forces and 23% of our civilian population. But we achieved our objective, which was, the human species survives. Our enemies learned that attacking humans costs more than they are willing to pay. As Veltar prepared his final report to the Nexarian High Command, he struggled to find words to describe what he had witnessed. The humans have demonstrated warfare capabilities that exceed all known parameters, he wrote. They appear willing to accept any casualty rate and fight for any duration necessary to achieve victory. Traditional concepts of acceptable losses do not apply to this species. He paused, then added the most important conclusion. Recommend immediate classification change for humanity. Previous designation, primitive species. New designation, uncontainable. For the first time in galactic history, the words total war appeared in an official military assessment. The humans had taught the galaxy that some species do not fight battles to minimize losses. They fight to eliminate threats completely, regardless of cost. 3 weeks later, Veltar received reports that the Cathari Empire, Vorthak Collective, and Zeldan raiders had all signed non-aggression treaties with humanity. None of them wanted to face human total war doctrine again. The humans had won not just a battle, but had redefined what victory meant in galactic warfare. They had shown that survival was worth any price and that some species would choose death over surrender. Beltar's final log entry read, "I thought I understood battle until I met humanity. They broke all limits I believed existed. They taught me that survival has no boundaries." 6 months after the siege of Earth ended, Commander Veltar found himself in an unprecedented situation. The Galactic Council had requested his presence at an emergency session. The topic, how to deal with humanity now that they had proven their military capabilities. Veltar stood before representatives from over 40 different species. Each delegate had read his reports about human warfare. None of them quite believed what they had read. "Commander Veltar," began High Counselor Zethran of the Altarian Federation, "your reports describe military tactics that violate every principle of civilized warfare. Are you certain these humans are not simply primitive barbarians?" "High Counselor, I observed their society for months. The humans are not barbarians. They are something far more complex and dangerous." "Explain." Veltar activated a holographic display showing human territory before and after the war. The humans entered this conflict with basic technology and limited military experience. They faced 3 separate enemy species with superior equipment and greater numbers. He changed the display to show casualty figures. The humans lost 78% of their military forces and 23% of their civilian population. By any standard calculation, they should have been completely defeated. "Yet they won," observed Counselor Murthak from the Crystalline Union. "They did more than win. They forced all 3 enemy species to sign permanent non-aggression agreements. The Cathari Empire, Vorthak Collective, and Gelden Raiders all refused to engage human forces again. How is this possible?" Veltar changed the display again, showing human military doctrine compared to galactic standards. "The humans operate under completely different assumptions about acceptable losses. Where we consider 70% casualties to be total defeat, they consider it an acceptable cost for strategic victory." High Counselor Zethran leaned forward. "You are suggesting that humans will fight until every last individual is dead rather than surrender?" "That is exactly what I am suggesting, and their enemies learned this lesson at enormous cost." The council chamber fell silent as the implications became clear. Every galactic species had military limits. Everyone understood when a war was lost and surrender became necessary. But if humans had no such limits, they could not be defeated by conventional means. "Commander," asked Counselor Valtesh from the Spiral Confederacy, "what do you recommend?" "I recommend that the Galactic Council establish formal diplomatic relations with humanity immediately." "Why?" "Because they are going to become the dominant military power in this region of space, whether we acknowledge it or not." 3 months later, Veltar found himself back in human space as the first official Galactic Council ambassador to Earth. The planet was still rebuilding from the siege, but the reconstruction efforts showed the same total commitment that humans brought to warfare. Captain Kim Dae-ho, who had somehow survived the ramming attack that destroyed his ship, met Veltar at the rebuilt Sol spaceport. The human captain now wore the uniform of an admiral in the reformed Terran Defense Force. "Admiral Kim, congratulations on your promotion." "Thank you, Commander. I understand you are here to establish formal diplomatic relations." "Yes. The Galactic Council has voted to recognize human sovereignty over all your claimed territories." Admiral Kim smiled. "That is generous considering we never asked for their permission." They traveled to the new human capital, a city called New Geneva that had been built from the ruins of several destroyed settlements. Veltar was amazed by what he saw. The humans had not just rebuilt their civilization, they had improved it. The new cities were designed with both civilian and military purposes in mind. Every building could serve as a fortress if needed. Every street could become a defensive position. The humans had learned from their experience and built their society to be ready for future conflicts. "Admiral, your people have militarized their entire civilization." "No, Commander. We have created a civilization that can survive." They met with President Park Soo-jin, who had been elected to lead the new global government. She was a former military officer who had commanded defense operations during the siege. "President Park, the Galactic Council is prepared to offer humanity full membership and all associated benefits." "What would membership require?" Adherence to galactic warfare conventions. Acceptance of casualty limits for military conflicts. Agreement to mandatory peace negotiations when losses exceed established thresholds. President Park was quiet for a long moment. Commander Veltar, we appreciate the offer, but we cannot accept those conditions. Why not? Because those conditions assume that surrender is sometimes acceptable. For humans, surrender to an aggressive enemy means extinction. We will never again place artificial limits on our right to defend ourselves. Veltar had expected this response. The Council anticipated you might feel this way. They have authorized me to offer an alternative arrangement, which is, humanity would be recognized as an independent galactic power with full territorial sovereignty. In exchange, you would agree not to initiate aggressive warfare against other species. That is acceptable. Humans have no interest in conquering other species. We only want to be left alone. And if other species attack human territory, President Park's expression became very serious. Then they will learn what the Kethari, Vorthak, and Jeldan learned. Some species do not surrender. The treaty was signed 3 weeks later. For the first time in galactic history, a species was granted recognition without having to accept standard warfare limitations. The humans were officially acknowledged as a power that operated under different rules. Veltar remained on Earth as the permanent galactic ambassador. Over the following months, he observed how human society continued to evolve. They maintained their military readiness while rebuilding their civilian infrastructure. Every human child still learned basic combat skills, but they also studied art, science, and philosophy. Admiral Kim, Veltar asked during one of their regular meetings, do you think humans will ever be able to live peacefully? Commander, humans have always been peaceful when allowed to be. We do not seek war, but we will never again be unprepared for it. And if no one threatens you, then we will explore the galaxy, build new colonies, develop new technologies, and create art and literature. Humans want the same things as other species. We just refuse to give them up without a fight. As time passed, Veltar began to understand something important about humanity. They were not a warrior species by nature. They were a survivor species. Everything they did was designed to ensure their continued existence. Other galactic powers learned this lesson as well. When territorial disputes arose near human space, both sides would quickly seek peaceful solutions rather than risk human involvement. No one wanted to face an opponent that would accept any casualty rate to achieve victory. Commander, Admiral Kim said one day, I want to show you something. They traveled to a memorial that had been built in the ruins of Old Sol. The names of every human who had died defending Earth were carved into a massive black wall. Millions of names covered the surface. This memorial represents 23% of our species, Admiral Kim explained. Every person listed here died to ensure that the remaining 77% could live freely. Veltar studied the wall of names. Do you think their sacrifice was worth it? Commander, look around you. Veltar looked at the city surrounding the memorial. Human children played in parks while their parents worked in nearby buildings. Students attended schools. Artists created beautiful sculptures. Scientists worked in laboratories. Life was continuing normally for billions of people. Yes, Admiral Kim continued, their sacrifice was worth it. Because of them, humanity will never again face extinction. Veltar spent 2 more years on Earth, documenting human society for the Galactic Council. His reports became required reading at military academies across known space. Every species wanted to understand how humans had achieved the impossible. The most important lesson was not about tactics or weapons. It was about commitment. Humans had shown that when survival was at stake, they would sacrifice everything else to preserve their species. No other consideration mattered more than continuation of human life. Commander, President Park said during their final meeting, what will you tell the galaxy about us? I will tell them that humans are not conquerors or destroyers. You are survivors, and that makes you the most dangerous species in the galaxy. Dangerous to whom? To anyone who threatens innocent life. Because you have proven that some things are worth any cost to protect. As Veltar prepared to leave Earth, he reflected on how much his understanding had changed. When he first encountered humans, he thought they were simply irrational fighters who did not understand when to surrender. Now he understood that humans did not fight because they enjoyed war. They fought because they valued peace enough to die for it. They did not seek destruction. They sought protection for those who could not protect themselves. Admiral Kim, Beltar said as he prepared to board his transport. I have one final question. What is that, Commander? If another species faced extinction the way humans did, would you help them? Admiral Kim did not hesitate. Yes, no species should have to face what we faced alone, even if helping them required enormous sacrifices. Commander,